Expectation. You've read the report, which has been composed by David and Rose and Eddie. That's in front of you. So what we're intending to do, if the meeting is happy with it, is we just, those that have got suggestions to improve, to add, they could say them and then we could just chat. We could maybe just get everyone's suggestions first and then try and deal with them because of maybe some similar ones. And then if we get agreement on the majority on those items can be included, it would be intended that would be then the Mayor, myself and the Deputy Chair of Finance would work with Rose, Eddie and Dave and finalise the letters, if that's okay. Because if we try and write them in committee, we will be here a lot longer. And people have already asked me what time does the Lego tree go on. But I don't think you want to be here to 8:30 or 8 o'clock when it does, so given we've got the mayoral proposal after this. So David, do you just want to start with an introduction, or Rose, just David, and then we'll just go through each one. So perhaps we should deal with the general introduction first.
Yep.
And then if people can comment on the general introduction of the, because each letter's got a similar general introduction, and then we'll go to the specific individual letters.
So, Chair, can I suggest I introduce the general introduction and we'll get Rose and Ed to deal with the specific elements in each of the letters. I guess there's just a few things I sort of want to highlight, which is for the general introduction, it's trying to set the right context in terms of how we're going forward, particularly in this triennium, and our relationship with CCOs. And so while we recognise they're at arm's length, I think the general message that is being conveyed here is we expect them to act in concert with the parent and in collaboration with each other, and that is not that's not in a sort of a mental frame that there won't be tension between the CCOs and the parent at times, but it's all about how we manage those tensions constructively. There's a strong emphasis here on performance metrics, and I think the council I have here for the governing body is that this isn't something we're going to get perfect in this annual plan. Nor is it going to be perfect in the second year. It's an ongoing process to actually just refine these metrics until we're measuring things which are really of importance to the Auckland community. So this is the start of what I'd say is a journey on those performance metrics. There's the Auckland Plan refresh. It's really important that that becomes one of the major strategic pieces next year to make sure there's alignment across all of the CCOs. So their input and contribution to that discussion is going to be crucial. And another big thing, which is touched on in some of the more specific feedback, is the role of CCOs in placemaking, which is, for instance, for transport, it's not just about a roading network. You also have important implications on the shape of local communities, particularly town centres, in terms of the road corridor, and we're really trying to highlight the importance of that in partnership with other CCOs that have similar responsibilities. There is, I just want to highlight also, there is a specific focus on group-wide policies. And the importance of those is that we want to engage with the CCOs in a discussion about what the content of those should be. But once that has been signed off by the governing body, probably through this committee, then all CCOs would be expected to adhere to them. So that covers areas around business cases, and my observation around business case methodology is that it's a bit patchy across the council and the CCOs. And we need a policy which actually gives a greater consistency in practice, and also around when decisions should actually be taken to the governing body as opposed to the CCO boards or their executives. So, and that's also true for the parent organisation. So wanting to see real lift in performance there and a consistency of practice, group procurement, treasury, insurance, and then sensitive spending. One element of that which may come through is the need for good disclosure around CE expenses, for instance, which is now common practice in the state sector. So it's those sort of issues where consistency is really important across the group. Finally, benchmarking. One of the issues around efficiency is when I tried to drive that program in central government, well, I did drive it, the key thing that really enabled ministers to get across the line is that they had really good information about the cost to serve across the administrative back office in particular, and they were beginning to get better information around the cost of frontline services. You'd be surprised how little government departments knew about that when we started that journey. But once we knew that there were a range of departments who were well behind best practice, it gave ministers confidence to actually set quite ambitious efficiency targets. So I think that's a necessary complement. If you're going to do an efficiency drive, you need good information about where the opportunity lies. So those sort of things which would be, I'd call good housekeeping, are necessary foundations as we move to actually really drive performance over the next 3 years. So that's, I'll finish on that in terms of the general themes, Chair.
Any comments on the general themes? Councillor Newman?
David, hi. With respect to the, have I understood you correctly that you're sort of touching on the shared services work streams in that space, which is modelled on that central agency's shared services project, which is, no, it's different?
No, can I comment on that? That's not a good benchmark to use. The CAS project was done predominantly to assist the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet rather than the other two agencies that participated in it. Its execution was acknowledged as not well done. Yeah. But that doesn't represent best practice in shared services, and all due respect to the Secretary of the Treasury in making that comment.
Okay, that's all.
Councillor Casey.
I'm looking at just an example, the Panuku first few paragraphs, which contains your general statements, and they're the same for each CCO. There's two things that I didn't like about it. And one was it's the one where you talk about local boards. Your current paragraph reads, local boards are an important part of Auckland Council's shared governance model, and as a council organisation, you need to remember they are elected members with decision-making responsibilities. I think that's, I didn't like it. And I rewrote it to be more concise. Local boards are an important part of Auckland Council's shared governance model. They are elected members with decision-making responsibilities.
Okay.
So it's not you should remember that. It's
that's good. Thank you for that.
You need
that's
to.
Good.
Now, further up, I'm getting all confused about the difference between customers, public and community, and you've used the three interchangeably, and I really don't like the word customer. And I think the responsibility of CCOs, as we've heard today, is to the public of Auckland, everybody, including the elected members. So where you use customer, I don't accept that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone got any comments on customers? Sorry, we're just going to try and be tight about this.
Everyone's a customer. Everyone's a
Actually
customer.
uses your services, so that's the definition.
Sorry,
No.
Councillor Cashman, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Cashman. Sorry, do you want to repeat what you said, Bill?
You actually have some choices. You don't need choices.
Linda? Sorry, Councillor Cooper.
I just on the general theme, I was a bit. I do remember us talking about the fact that all of our letters of expectation expected the organisations to fall. I don't know why we're doing that again. I understand the refresh, that's good. There was just something in there, and it is a bit more specific though, so do you want to wait for the specific stuff?
Yeah, no, we're just doing basically the first page of every letter.
Yep.
So pretty well. Okay, so Councillor Casey had a query about customer, but I don't see it sort of been roundly condemned, so another point?
Yeah, just where you talk about you need to be responsive to the public and to Auckland's elected members, there was something about, he would reinforce our common identity through our organisational marketing and branding. It was more than that, David. It was about link back to ratepayer funds. So it's not just about branding, it's not just about marketing. It's wherever possible acknowledging this is ratepayer funded. We've never done that to date.
we'll take that on board, because I do get the impression the majority actually get pretty annoyed about that at times. Consensus, we try and weave that in somehow. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I think we should look at asking all the CCOs, I think this is a really, really good start, to look at potentially other funding opportunities where at all possible. That's the first thing. And also always to look for efficiencies and costs. I know that you've said that they should all hold administrative and corporate spending at or below the 16, 17 levels, but the Mayor has his 3 to 6% across the group, so I think we should potentially look for further efficiencies and potentially incentivise staff to achieve those, because quite often there's the perception that the culture is one of just sort of spending money. So if you incentivise people, potentially that's something. It's what we do in the corporate sector, just to help change the culture. You've got to find a carrot.
So, sorry, just whisper to my ears, just remember we don't have incentives in the public sector, and I know you might find that anathema, but...
What a shame.
Now, is it funding opportunities or alternative or other revenue streams?
Other
Revenue streams would probably be the best. Okay, so first page, we're pretty happy. Okay, right, well, Rose, do you want to just start with, we're going into the specifics. So Auckland Transport, I got the impression that David was passing you the hospital pass on that one.
Through the chair, I think I'll let Ed do this because
Eddie,
he's done
sorry,
most of the work.
Sorry, between the two of you, yep.
Thank you.
Sorry, Eddie.
For those councillors who don't know me, I'm Edward Siddle. I work in the CCO governance team. So shall I just summarise just the Auckland Transport one and then have
So
comment?
we're taking it, we're taking
Okay.
it that people have read these, so therefore summarising, yes.
Okay, so there's just some key points that we make in the letter. The first one is that Auckland Transport should really think about its role as a placemaker and an urban regenerator, not just think about its transport modelling role. The second one is to really emphasise public transport in active modes. And the third key thing is to ensure that its operations are really in strategic alignment with Council's direction. The next, down towards the bottom of the third page, we start to go into some key focus areas, including Auckland Transport's role in preparing the RLTP, the Regional Land Transport Plan, and ensuring that's in alignment with Council direction, working to ensure that its plans incorporate the recommendations of the Auckland Transport Alignment Project, including technical advice on new technology and demand management options, such as the vehicle occupancy and smarter transport pricing. And then on the final page, just a few other points, including providing greater transparency in terms of asset management and maintenance and renewals, having stronger targets around public transport use, getting full value out of the investment in rail electrification, delivering on the City Rail Link, obviously, and also maintaining momentum on the cycling program. So that's probably a good quick summary of what we've put in the letter.
Okay, Councillor Newman.
How do you reconcile through a letter of expectation that Auckland Transport will comply with the strategic direction through placemaking that we wish to achieve through the future of land supply strategy, when that is not a compulsory requirement of developers who had the funding? They can come and ask to go out of sequence. How do we use this letter of intent, a letter of expectation, to compel both Auckland Transport and Watercare to comply with that strategic direction when it's not a requirement necessarily of our unitary plan?
Through the chair. Yes, you're right. Achieving that through the letter of expectation is difficult, but we are looking at that as part of the accountability mechanisms review. So, for instance, we were looking at some protocols to be developed for those CCOs, particularly Watercare and Auckland Transport, for how we should deal with out-of-sequence development in the region. and they would be asked through probably either section 91, I'm not sure which accountability mechanism we'll use, but there are other tools that we can use to achieve that. The LOE can signal that that's what we're looking to do, but it can't actually achieve that on its own because it is simply a letter of what we expect rather than a compulsion for a CCO to do anything in particular.